Hello, and welcome to Adventures with Scars. I'm your host, Clifton Huffmaster. Adventures with Scars is a discussion on the invisible side effects of cancer, the emotional side effects. Last season, I presented my philosophy on the aspects of the cancer experience that are difficult to put into words. I defined what is invisible and presented a timeline of how we heal from the trauma of cancer. In the second season, I'm speaking with patients, survivors, and co-survivors. These discussions help us all better understand the true experience of cancer. Because we are some of the first people to truly live with cancer, even metastatic cancer for years at a time, it is important for us to talk about our experiences with cancer. This podcast specifically is interested in whether or not these invisible side effects of cancer are real. So we're talking to patients and survivors from all over America, asking whether they want to confirm or disagree with my philosophy. Today, I'm very thankful to our sponsors, Hannah Nicole Vineyard, for making this message possible. I'd like to greet my husband, Dr. Clifton Huffmaster, to the podcast today. Clifton, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really fun to get to talk with you like this.
All right, you broke up, so will you say that again?
Oh, of course. Sorry about that. I said thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It's really fun to get to speak to you like this.
Yes, of course. It's wonderful for our story to be told from both perspectives, the perspective of a survivor and the perspective of a co-survivor, two of us both looking at the same disease, the same experience of the disease, but from different angles. And I really think it's important for us to acknowledge the co-survivor's story and make sure that when we talk about cancer, we're not just talking about a patient, the person who's receiving a treatment, but we're talking about life in general, the person's life around this disease. And around my disease is my husband and my children. And so I'm so thankful Clifton agreed to come on and talk about our story. So if you haven't followed my personal story, then you may not know that I was recently went back into treatment. So earlier this year in 2023, my cancer started to grow, and we looked at treatment options, and my oncologist decided the best treatment option for me at this time was to return to chemo. So I have been on chemo for the last few months. And I did chemo at the very beginning of my cancer journey, 7.5, 8 years ago, but it's been a minute. And now we're reliving some of these experiences, and we're facing a new season ahead where I am compromised both with my immunity and my strength and my brain power and so many other things. And so I thought it was a perfect time to bring Clifton onto the show and talk about what it feels like to walk through chemo as a family. So Clifton, first of all, why don't you just from your perspective, talk about our cancer story?
Well, of course, as you said, our cancer story really goes back nearly 8 years. And so when we were first diagnosed as stage 3, we went through a whole year of very rigorous treatments, including the chemotherapy for 6 months, and then major surgeries, and then radiation. And at that point, we thought that everything would be all good, and that as long as you were clear for 5 years, that we were done with cancer, and we'd be putting it behind us as kind of closing that chapter in our life. But then just 6 months later, you were diagnosed as stage 4, and we learned that the cancer had actually spread from breast cancer into your spine. And we were terrified, of course, but we had great success with your first line of treatment, which gave us 5 years of not just progression-free time, but actually it shrunk way, way back, and you got scans for years that were labeled as no evidence of disease, and we were feeling so good. But we were always, your oncologist was always very, we thought at the time, overly pessimistic. But come to find out, the oncologist was just being very realistic and brutally honest with us by always saying, this will return. This will come back. Even though your scans say no evidence of disease, you will be fighting this more. And we never chose to dismiss those ideas, but we always lived with, irrational optimism, believing that, everything would be okay. And then just a few months ago, we got the news that the cancer not only had mutated, but had started to regrow. And as part of that regrowth, it had spread to different parts of your body, including your liver. And so we went on into chemotherapy, and now we've been back in chemotherapy for a couple of months. And that's, just as far as I can relate. That's kind of our cancer story.
And from the perspective of a co-survivor, someone who is walking along this entire process, but is not the patient at the moment, what are you feeling? What's your experience through all this?
It's interesting because the first time we went through chemotherapy together, we just didn't know what to expect. We had no idea of what this was going to be like. And so actually, in a lot of ways, having gone through it before, going through it again feels much easier, because there's so much less fear of the unexpected. Rather, I feel prepared. Like, we know what's going to happen, even though we know that it's not going to be easy. We know that there will be an end. We know that we can get through it. And I feel like we've been tried and tested, and having already come through it once, I feel a lot more comfortable is not the right word, but I feel more comfortable than we did the first time, just because I feel armed with knowledge, and I can manage my expectations because I have a much better idea of what things are going to look like. So I suppose the first thing I'm feeling really is like fortified by knowledge and experience. And then, of course, I feel a lot more hopeful than I did the first time we went through this, because even though I know it's going to be hard, I do know that the process will end and that chemotherapy will be done eventually. So I guess I feel like we've been prepared more for the treatments this round, and I feel a lot more hopeful in the outcome than I did the first time.
And you bring up a good point, this uncertainty that we all experience through cancer, whether it's the uncertainty that cancer is going to come back or the certainty around treatments themselves. In the last 8 years, what a huge chunk of time, though. Can you think back? Has there been someone or something or an organization, anyone that's helped you as a co-survivor sort of deal with that uncertainty or stand alongside you or give you information that help you eliminate some of that uncertainty?
I've got to be honest with you. I can't think of a single organization, obviously outside of venture therapy, but I can't think of a single organization that made me a priority or came alongside me to help manage my expectations, or really gave me any priority. It just felt like, rightfully so, but the attention had always been on you and making your life easier, and basically coming alongside you. I never really felt like any organization understood what I was going through or gave me any resources or came alongside me as a co-survivor. So I honestly, I wish that I had something to report, but I can't think of any organizations that have come alongside me and helped me at all.
And in all this time, I know I've had 5 or 6 or 7 different oncologists. And I have never had an oncologist that really asked about my family either. So never in 8 years has a oncologist said, we have mental health services for your children, or would your husband like to talk to someone? They've never asked me if I wanted to talk to someone. So neither from the medical field nor from sort of the nonprofit foundation field, I don't think our families received a lot of support, especially not educational support or emotional support. There have been organizations that provided us trips or vacations. I think we've done 2 or 3 of those. But when it comes to understanding and eliminating that uncertainty, there seems to be a void there in what's available. Would you agree, Clifton?
I would agree wholeheartedly. I just can't, I keep trying to rack my brain and think about, an organization that's reached out to me or provided me with education or counseling or concern. And I just can't think of anything. I should say, though, that when organizations support you, I do feel kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I'm supported in a kind of like, I don't know, because they're supporting you and I'm supporting you, they are taking some of the burden off of me. And so when organizations do support you, I feel kind of supported by proxy, but nobody has ever supported me directly.
And can you think of something? What kind of support might you have wanted, or what kind of things would you want available to other men who are walking through this with wives with a terminal disease?
Yeah, I feel like the most important thing that would have been helpful for me is just connection, right? And so if there was some kind of organization that would have been able to say like, "Hey, we see that you're going through this," and a lot of guys feel really alone when they go through this, and a lot of guys don't know what to expect when they go through this. So here are some other people maybe that you could connect with, or other people that you could just talk to that either have gone through this or are going through this. And that would, not only would that provide a lot of education, because then you could say, "Hey, we're doing this. Did you do that? Oh yeah, we did that as well." So it would have been nice to just have a connection with somebody who's gone through this or is going through this now. And then that also would have, to me, supported my emotional health, right? And it's because I'm not like one to go to counselors or therapists or anything like that. For me, that's not really my thing. But to have somebody to talk to that's gone through it would be an emotional support, right? A huge boon to me, feeling supported and being able to just talk to somebody who knows exactly what I'm going through. So if there was some kind of an organization that could have connected me, put me in contact with somebody who's going through this, or even better, has already gone through this, I feel like that would have been the most helpful thing. And then, of course, for me, just having somebody recognize that I'm going through this with you would be a huge help, right? Even if they didn't actually help, just recognizing that I'm going through something and trying to help would have been huge for me.
Yeah, we talk about isolation, right? So eliminating that isolation, not just for the person receiving treatment, but for the family members. And there are good organizations that acknowledge the children whose parents are going through treatment, but looking at that spouse, there's definitely an empty space there around acknowledging the spouse, providing connection for the spouse, and other people living in the household to handle walking through the cancer experience. So yeah, eliminating uncertainty and providing those connection, eliminating isolation are both really important in this process. So Clifton, what is some of the biggest hurdles you had to deal with? What was some of the biggest challenges you as a co-survivor had to face and wrestle with as I walked through my cancer experience?
In addition to all the emotional baggage and feelings of isolation and fear and a lack of education, in addition to all that stuff, to me is really the practical day-to-day concerns, right? I'm a real practical guy. And so a lot of what I've dealt with through these times has actually been the struggle of trying to, do everything that you would do around the house and for the kids, and then taking care of you on top of that, in addition to having my full-time job. And so when you feel like you're trying to do, you know, everything that your wife would do, and then doing everything that you would do, and then taking care of the kids, and then taking care of you, so much of my burden feels like it's just being overtaxed and overworked. And then, of course, with that comes the lack of recognition for all that you're going through. I see everybody talking about how strong you are and how brave you are and how much you're doing to fight this cancer. And then I feel like, well, I'm doing all the stuff that she could be doing, in addition to my job and taking care of her. But I don't feel like I get the recognition that that would feel good to me, as far as like, hey, you're carrying a lot of burdens too, and we see that you're overtaxed, and you're working really hard too. And this is to me, I think, one of the foundational problems for caregivers is you have this, it's basically a paradox where you're doing like every single thing that you can do to take care of your spouse and take care of your family and take care of the finances and take care of the house and do the chores. And you're doing everything that you can. You're completely overtaxed and overburdened and exhausted from doing all of these physical tasks. But then at the same time, you're feeling like you can't do anything to actually help your wife get better. And so I call it the paradox of caregiving, because you're running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to get all the chores done and make all the appointments and do your full-time job and take care of the kids. But then at the same time, you feel basically powerless to actually help with the primary concern, which is your wife getting better. That's the one thing that you want most of all to fix. The thing you want most of all to help with is the one thing that you can't actually fix. You can't actually help to get rid of the cancer. You can't actually help for her to heal and have restoration. And so it's this paradox of, I'm doing absolutely everything I can, and I'm completely overwhelmed with just the day-to-day tasks of living. But then you feel powerless at the same time, because you can't actually fix what's wrong. You can't actually help the real problem. All you can do is do all these other things around the cancer, but you can't get in there and actually help your wife to heal. So these are the things that I struggle the most with.
Yeah, that sounds very relatable. I could feel that for sure. Now, what tools did you find that helped you with this? Like what did you lean on, and what gave you strength to carry all of these burdens?
Yeah, the best way I can say it is to have family and friends and local connections. Is kind of that grassroots support community that is so important. And so, as I say, when people brought us meals, that took an enormous burden off of me, just simply by a neighbor or a friend or a family member bringing by dinner for that night. Because that frees up so much of my time. And it's a recognition of, hey, this is something that ordinarily Lauren would do. We see that Lauren can't do it. You suck at cooking. So here's dinner for you guys to enjoy. And then I would feel supported, even though they were really bringing the dinner for you. I would feel supported because because it was a recognition of something that I didn't have time to do, or I wasn't able to provide. So in bringing dinner is a small example, but that's the kind of thing that just helps me, and that doesn't come from organizations, right? That comes mostly from personal connections. And then another thing that really helps me to feel supported is essentially when people recognize the work that I'm doing. And so for me, I really appreciate the words of affirmation. So whether it comes from a stranger or a doctor or a friend or family member, just simply that recognition that, hey, I know a lot of attention goes to your wife, but we see that you're struggling too. We see that you're working hard too. And so that's another thing that helps me. But then most of these things seem to come from my natural built-in support system. So I do wonder about people that don't have the kind of wonderful family and community that I enjoy. I'm like, well, how do people do it when they don't have all of these grassroots connections surrounding them? So these are just a few of the kind of like practical ways that I felt supported and helped throughout this.
I've noticed that in our girls too, that when someone brings a meal, it's like a party. It's like they're unwrapping something. We don't know what's inside. And the girls get so excited about trying someone else's recipes and trying someone else's ideas of how something should be made. And they really feel supported, I think, when someone shows up, even if they don't stay and talk but a minute. The girls just can feel our community around us showing up literally in a hot plate handed to us. And definitely when we ask for gifts or supportive things and we get those in the mail, the kids definitely feel that support, even though maybe my name is on the package when something arrives, and maybe it's not even interesting to the kids at all. It might be some kind of medicinal tea, but the kids still feel the presence of our community around us. And I think that they are strengthened knowing that we do have people who will step up and who will step in, and that our sort of the strength of our life definitely doesn't come from me. And I think that's maybe a common misconception among children, that the parents hold your safety, your love, your strength, and everything you need in life. Because what happens if I don't have strength to give and I don't have patience to be kind all the time or whatever, because I'm not feeling well? And to see other people step into those spaces and not leave sort of a vacuum in the kids' lives, and even in Clifton's life, when I'm not present, because that community fills those spaces. And I think it's really important that the community is not often built after diagnosis. Like you have to be intentional about who you're investing in and who you're showing up for, because by the time you're sick, it's hard to find and build community. You don't have the energy, you don't have the strength to do that. And so being intentional with life, really digging into our values and making sure we're living well amongst the people who even just live next to us. We're building relationships, we're reaching out to family, and just making sure those relationships stay strong, so that if not for you, then for your kids and your husband, when you're diagnosed or you progress or something, you have people to fill those gaps. I've definitely seen it in my kids, just the joy and the excitement when we are supported well by our community.
Yeah, I just want to affirm what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is exactly correct. And it's so important, even beyond the world of cancer. But the fact of the matter is, we have to live our lives in community. We have to live our lives in connection. We have to live our lives with relationships, because those are the relationships, those are the connections, that's the community that's going to support you when times get tough, when you need people. Well, that's not the right time to create and foster relationships, right? You need to have those connections already in place so that you have this support system already preheated. And I think to expand on that, I should talk a little bit about the way that you've done that, because you have this support system, you have this community, you have all these relationships that are spread all over the country. And so it was amazing to see how people from all over the place were supporting you, and how the story goes, right? The story behind that, I think, is powerful, especially for the kids, because you recognize that not everybody in your support community could deliver you a hot meal, or come mow the lawn, or help clean the house, or give the kids a ride to school, right? We have people local that can do those things, but people that live far away but are still part of your community, they couldn't do those things. And so you put out, and at the time I was like, well, I don't know about that, but you put out kind of a thing on social media that said, hey, if you live far away, or you're not able to help with time or dinner or something, but you want to help me, you want to support me, you want to recognize what this is doing to my family, here's a list of things that we could use, that you could order from Amazon and send to us, and that any kind of gift from Amazon would be much appreciated. And here's like a wish list of things that we need. And by doing that, you provided your support community spread out throughout the country with the ability to help us and support us and come alongside us. And I had no idea how extensive your support community went throughout the nation until our porch was piled with boxes from Amazon of all the things on your wish list that would help you to feel better, but would also help us to feel better. And that was in itself a small miracle. But then that became even more impactful on the day when we had to cut your hair off. And it was just amazingly, well, it was difficult and powerful at the same time, because the kids and I were all very emotional about seeing you lose your hair. But then we had these gifts to open, and I was so relieved to see the kids have all of these things to open, even if they were gifts for you. It didn't matter, because the kids had something tangible to show, to see all the people that were supporting us, and all the people that wanted to help us, and all the people that wanted to reach out to us. So it's just beautiful the way that coincided with the very difficult job of cutting your hair, the very emotional strain of seeing you suddenly bald, but then having all of these gifts for the kids to open and enjoy, and all these tangible things for them to see how many people across this country wanted to support you and wanted to help you. And for them, that became a part of their support system, because they were able to see something that was from somebody who wanted to help us in our most desperate time.
Absolutely. It was and the story is that the first time I shaved my head, I think Clifton was at work and the girls were so little, and I couldn't take it one more minute, and my head was just like on fire. So I just went up and went into my bathroom and just shaved my head, put on a hat, acted like nothing happened, and came back down and kept being the mom I was to the toddlers I had, and really just didn't ever mention it. And this time I really didn't want that experience. I didn't want to be by myself. And so I asked my family to shave my head and be with me when the time came, and my head started to hurt again. And yeah, I knew that was coming. And so just, you know how Amazon it is, it only takes 24 hours for things to arrive at your door. So just a day or two before I had put myself out there. It wasn't like me to ask for things, but because I tell other people to do this, I decided to do it for our family as well. And so I just put things like hats and scarves and wigs and random things that might be fun for our family while I was resting. And yeah, the kids loved it. They would open the door and there would be a mountain of presents, and we saved them. We didn't all open them at the same time. So every day, every evening, we'd open a few, because that first week was hard. I lost my hair. I went back into treatment. I had a second round of chemo. There was just a lot of changing and shifting going on. But in the middle of that were these small kindnesses, literally small packages of someone who thought of us, who sent us a fancy pair of earrings, or, a nice scarf for my head. And everyone, even though they were directed at me, it made my kids so happy. It made, like Clifton said, it made them feel supported and loved. And I think it acknowledged the work that we're doing as well. Just that I work and I do the podcast and I write and I support families all over the country, but the kids don't really see that. They know my heart and what I'm trying to accomplish, but maybe they don't know the true impact, and I won't probably know the true impact. But for them to see so many people respond and encourage us and write us letters and send us gift cards was such a thrill for the girls. It got us through that difficult week with smiles on our faces. Honestly, it wasn't even hard to walk that out because we were filled up. I think in cancer, I often say for every high, there's a low, and for every low, you need an equal high. Sometimes the lows are really, really hard. And so you need something extreme to sort of balance your family out and carry you forward. And for us, that week when we were experiencing really difficult things, each of these tiny packages, these little kindnesses that were sent to our door, picked us up, filled us back up, made us remember what we believe, right? Not what we are experiencing right now, because the moment was hard. The moment felt hopeless, felt bad. We're back where we were. And we don't know what's coming for us. And we were in a very low moment, but we remembered what we believe, who we truly are. And in each of these things, like, fortified that idea, and not just carried me forward, but carried the kids forward, and Clifton, and gave us something to look forward to. One of the reasons I started adventure therapy was because I realized my kids needed something to look forward to. I realized in the cancer treatments, especially when you're little, the bad treatment and mom's sick, and then another treatment and mom's sick and another treatment, that is their expectance. I mean, that's all they can expect, right? There might be happy moments in between, but those hard things really just keep pushing down the happy. And I knew when I started adventure therapy, kids needed something good to look forward to during cancer. They could not live years of their young life just with this shadow of cancer and sickness over them and their household. There had to be high points. There had to be good moments in there that acknowledged the kids, but gave them something fun to explore, reminded them it was okay to laugh, gave them something new to do so they didn't think life was ending right now. And that's why I started adventure therapy. I started that routine for my own children through tiny little shifts in our schedule. And then I realized I needed to do this at a bigger level. And it made a huge difference for my kids. It really did. And I think it makes difference for all the kids that we serve, in the families who are impacted by cancer. But for our family during this last season, these packages that were sent us were those tiny adventures. It's this positive expectation in the middle of something that's difficult. They had something to come home to and wonder what was on our porch. And then they got to look at those boxes, like I said, just like Christmas, wondering what was inside and if it would be fun or if it'd just be another box of tea for mom. So, which I love, but the kids were not always excited about. But it's just those kind of moments that give them good experiences in the middle of the difficult. And I think not just experiences, but values, right? They realize now how important it is when we do something small and kind for others. They know what it feels like to receive that. And so if we just make an extra batch of cookies and deliver it to someone, well, now they can sort of feel that. They know that that will brighten someone's day and really make some other households' kids excited when they come home and see something unexpectedly good in their home. And I think so installing these deeper values in our children to act in kindness and realize the impact that kindness will have, even if we don't see it, we know what it feels like. And I think that's so important in acknowledging families, and acknowledging the children and the spouses of the families.
Yeah, and I think that that is so just such a profound thing, right? Because when you do receive this goodness, and you do receive these small acts of kindness, you realize how impactful they are. And then when you perpetuate the cycle of kindness and you do something for somebody else, well, not only does that help them, and not only does that push them towards doing other things for other people, but then you also get that wonderful reward of having done something nice and having turned from yourself out into somebody else, right? And so when you turn from your own problems, from your own situation to go help somebody else, then of course, somehow you're able to lose a little bit of your own problems because you're not focusing on what you have going on, but you're pushing outward into somebody else's life. And then somehow in doing so, you're able to get some relief for yourself at the same time. So this idea of receiving acts of kindness and that pushes you into doing other acts of kindness, that has like a double benefit or like an exponential benefit. I'm not good at math, but you know what I'm trying to say, in that then you're inspired to do acts of kindness towards others, and that gives you purpose, and that gives you the ability to invest in other people's lives. And that's also a benefit to yourself, because when you're investing in others, your problems can feel more bearable, I guess is the right word.
Absolutely. There's so much there about purpose, about relationship. There's so much we can learn from these experiences, which is why we want to talk about them. Clifton, what was the greatest kindness someone's given toward you? Do you have a story of the greatest kindness someone's done toward you in the last 8 years of our cancer journey?
Well, that's a very good question, and I wish that I had a very good answer. But I can't at the top of my head just think of like, oh, this was the thing that somebody did for me that, stood up, stands out above everything else. So I can't put my finger on a specific thing that was done for me, but I will say, just that I at least have an answer to your question. I will say that when we took that trip to Hawaii, and I cannot remember the organization, I know that you'll help me out later, but when that organization sent the whole family to Maui, that to me was just powerful. Like it was a gift for the whole family. Even though your name was on the package, it was something that we all experienced together. And it was just so wonderful to get out and experience such beauty as a family together. And it felt like one of those few gifts that I received that was for all of us. And so, yeah, when we were sent to Hawaii, that was just such an impactful, meaningful trip for me. And so that kind of stands out right now. But if I had more time to think, I could probably come up with something that was more just for me. But off the top of my head, that trip to Hawaii was incredible for the whole family.
And I think it goes back to that idea of, I had just been diagnosed stage 4, and after barely recovering from all the treatments of stage 3, and we didn't know if it was treatment resistant. We didn't know if we could get it under control again. And we just didn't know what the future was going to hold. And an organization provided us this trip. And I think it goes back to that, for as low as you are, you have to have an opposite high, right? And so Clifton and I were probably as low as we'd ever been at that point. We didn't know what to hope for even at that time. And so to be given a gift of something that was almost bigger than what we could hope for, it created a balance. And when our kids talk about that season of their life, they talk about Maui. They talk about, I mean, they're little, but they remember so many things, and they don't talk about how hard it was for mom and dad, and they don't talk about, the new treatments or the scans or anything of that nature. They only talk about Maui. That's the only thing they really remember, because it was that balancing. It was the bringing our lives back into balance, where we could see positive things in our future, right? We could dream about positive things in our future, and it gave us the strength we needed to move forward and face the disease that I had just been diagnosed with. And so, yeah, that was a great family vacation. And I do think it strengthened us and helped us move forward. And maybe we would have taken us a lot longer to move forward and find purpose in the new diagnosis if we hadn't been given that as a gift.
I should mention another thing, and that is um, we went to the Smoky Mountains to stay at the Dreammore Resort um, with an organization called Leslie's Week. And the Leslie's Week trip also was very, very important. And the reason that one was so good is it had the whole family vacation aspect, but then at the same time, Leslie's Week did a really great job of supporting the individual members of the family as well. And so I distinctly remember going to because the whole retreat at Leslie's Week is just for women with breast cancer and their families. And so all of the men there were husbands or caregivers to women with breast cancer. And so when we all, as part of the trip, all of the men who were experiencing or had experienced very similar situations, we all got together. And so that was like an instantaneous community of people that were sharing similar experiences. And so that Leslie's Week was just a wonderful trip as a family where we got to experience things together. But they also had the specific men's group, and then they had also specific children's activities where kids could be doted over, but then also meet other kids in a similar circumstance. And I know they did things just for the women as well, so so that they could feel supported and have community with women that were going through the same thing they were. And so Leslie's Week was also just a wonderful gift because it did connect me with other men who were going through the same thing I was. And so that's probably worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, Leslie's Week is an organization serving metastatic women. So it's only women with metastatic breast cancer. And of course, we know and love Camp Kesem, which is an organization supporting the children. And even though it's just 1 week out of the year, the kids love it and they look forward to it, and they wear the gear proudly almost every day sometimes. And they love that there's a community out there for them. And Camp Kesem has been very beneficial to my children for sure. And of course, adventure therapy, that is what we're trying to do. At adventure therapy, create these happy moments, create these adventures, give families permission to laugh and to grow together, even in the midst of cancer. And adventure therapy is also at the same time trying to fill that void of education, giving the survivors and the co-survivors and everyone impacted by cancer a picture of what it feels like, so they don't have to feel like they're alone. It is very difficult to get a group of men together to talk about what they're going through, but we can provide the education, we can provide these conversations around the work of cancer, what it feels like to walk it out, in hopes that we can eliminate some of that isolation and minimize some of that fear along the way. So Clifton, we've been talking about gifts and actual physical gifts people have given us, but I want to ask you, what is a gift of cancer that you've experienced? What is something that's good or beautiful or deeply meaningful or purposeful that you've experienced because our family is impacted by cancer, that you think maybe you would not have gotten there or experienced without the presence of cancer in our lives?
That is such a difficult question, because it's very hard to shift your mindset to think about the gift of cancer. And if honestly, if it weren't for your perspective on cancer, I would have never been able to make that kind of a connection. But I do think that the idea of urgency in life and purpose I think are the two greatest gifts for cancer that I've received, because I've seen you through cancer develop this profound meaning for your life. You found what it is that you were put on earth to do, and to have that kind of purpose, to have that kind of intention for your life. I feel so sorry now for people that, well, that are not impacted by cancer, or are impacted by cancer, and they still can't find any kind of meaning for what they're supposed to do. And honestly, you would think I would look at people that haven't been touched by a deadly disease, with envy, but instead I see people that are kind of floating through life with no cares, and therefore, because they have no cares, they have no purpose, they have no intention, they have no drive. And so I actually feel sorry for them. I want for them to find something that actually motivates them to make the world a better place. And then, of course, with that comes that idea of urgency, right? So many of us are just delaying our future, delaying our purpose, delaying our activity. But what are we waiting for, right? When you live with somebody who has terminal cancer, you see this sense of urgency. I should be doing with my life what I should be doing right now. I should not be waiting. I should not be delaying. What my purpose is should be in the here and now. And so I think these twin ideas of urgency and purpose have been by far the greatest gift of cancer. To see what needs to be done, to see what your purpose is in life, to give your life meaning, and then to make it urgent, to make it something that you need to invest in right now, rather than delaying or continuing to float on until it's too late.
Yeah, I think when we talk about urgency, it's not because we think I'm going to die, right? It's not an urgency out of this sort of mournful urgency, as in, I only have a year to live, I better do it all now. It's more of an urgency out of respect. Like, I have today. I want to honor and respect today. I want to make sure that today is meaningful and it's not a waste. It's not something that just disappeared without me thinking. Today is important. Today is we want more life, we want more time, but what are we doing with the time we have, right? And so I think it's a little bit like budgeting or something, where if you've only got $100 for the week, you're going to make sure every dollar counts and goes exactly where it needs to go. And I feel a little bit like that for my life. If I've only, I don't know how much time I have, but it doesn't really matter. I know I have today. I know I have 24 hours, and I want to make sure today counts. I want to make sure my legacy is moving and my purpose is present. And in any way possible, I'm multiplying all the things that are important to me, and so that they can go and spread beyond me. But yeah, the urgency is like out of valuing what we have, out of respect of where we already are. And I think about this a lot. Sometimes there's rhythms in life, and we experience it today, and we're already like excited about the next time we're going to experience it. And somehow the experience of it today is diminished because we know it'll come next month or next year. It'll be here next Christmas or whatever. And I think that a little bit of that urgency is just learning to enjoy it today without expectations of what might be in the future, because our ideas about what might come are some of the hardest things around the cancer experience. We have, whether we try to or not, we have these visions of what Christmas will look like or what our vacation will look like. And cancer has a way of disrupting that. And so instead of living in what will be, it's a lot more about just loving where you are, loving, being urgently present today, so that you're not missing out on the beauty of life and waiting for more life, right? And so, yes, this presence of urgency and purpose, Clifton and I definitely talk about this a lot, wishing for people more that I wish they could just find something that would make them excited to live, and not waste the days and the time and the money that they have and the resources they have today. Because we're just aware, we're hyper aware of the blessing of today, the resources we have today, the time, the strength. Today in chemo, strength is my greatest resource, right? I have to limit it more than any other thing I have on earth, pretty much, because there's only a certain amount of strength and energy I have in a day. And again, I use it intentionally. I cut out the things that I absolutely do not have to do, like grocery shopping. I can have someone deliver groceries. So that saves me this much energy, and I can apply that later on. And so I just think that with cancer, it is an opportunity, right? Living with cancer, being impacted by cancer is an opportunity to embrace the gift of today, the beauty of today, the presence of what is here, right? And learning to find joy in that. So thank you so much, Clifton, for telling your perspective on cancer. Thank you for trusting me with on my podcast and allowing me to tell just a different part of who we are. If this conversation has been meaningful to you, please check out our other episodes of the podcast, or dig a little deeper by checking out our other resources that are available. You can find out more information at venturetherapyfoundation.org.